Alright, class, if as soon as you get in here, you can all log on to Kahoot and enter the game pin that's on the board. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of review from vocabulary that we've learned in the past, and then we're going to be learning some new vocabulary. I just want to see what you guys know so I know what I need to touch on more in the next couple of lessons. Alright, looks like we're just waiting on one person. Alright, Matt, are you L2? L2, K? Okay.
Yeah, that's me.
Alright, are you guys ready?
Yes.
Alright,
Yes.
let's go.
What's the question? Refers to a
So they're all going to be definitions, and then you pick the
read it
correct
out
one.
loud.
This one is a word that refers to a writer's word choices. It could be formal or informal word choice, ornate or plain, etc.
Oh. Hit the wrong thing.
Alright.
Time's up.
Looks like one of you guys got that right. I'm going to try to get time
tone
to.
shift.
I'll hold it
Oh,
up
got
for you
this
guys
shit.
so you can see it a little better. Alright.
Yeah.
Looks like Matt's in first place.
Yeah, lucky.
Okay. Multi-step.
It's even got more advanced because you have to like click the color and submit now. It used to be a just like you click the color.
I like it more.
And don't be worried if you guys don't know everything right off the bat, because we're going to work on this in the next couple of classes.
This is really good, you guys. How did three people?
Alright, so it is tone. Alright, got a change in the lead.
God, no!
Alrighty, so it's tone shift. So when a writer moves from one tone to another tone, could be a shift in tone.
That's embarrassing.
No worries. Lots more questions. Plenty of time to come back, guys.
You're right.
Getting back into it.
I love learning.
Alrighty. Does anyone have any questions so far?
Ooh, what a move.
Feeling good. Thank you.
Good job, you guys.
Me too.
I'm glad we all got that one. I think that's our first question we all
Yeah.
got.
Dang it. I just,
Oh,
Ooh.
Kate, we're close.
I know. Ah. I'm so nervous. I think I got that one. I think I got that one.
Nice. Looks like everybody is pretty
You might have
familiar with
taken the
that.
I feel like I took the
I
lead.
think you did.
Oh,
There
she's
it
on
went.
fire.
There it went.
She's
I
on
felt
fire.
She got me far.
Looks like you guys are starting to get the hang of it.
I just felt the rush between that one problem was getting the answer in.
Wait, someone got
I think it's that.
What?
It's using like or I.
I pressed the.
Alright. I pressed triangle. I pressed triangle. I know it. It was simile.
Without using like his
Okay. See? Oh my god. You gotta be kidding me. I pressed triangle.
Dude, drop it. We're moving on.
It's okay. There'll be more cahoots in the future. You can redeem yourself.
Ugh.
Alright, looks like we're pretty divided on that. Does anyone have any questions about illusions?
No, I let the competitive nature get the best of me.
I just.
Oh, fine.
Nice.
Back in this game.
You are. You're doing good.
You even said the word before you knew it.
Those vocab books,
I did something.
you did something for me.
Oh!
Nice.
This one's a little tricky.
Oh no!
This is obviously yellow.
What?
Well, it is
Who did put
unlikely
yellow
that
dolls?
the Dallas Cowboys would win the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, that is not the correct answer.
Oh man.
I'm simply just not.
I think
good.
okay.
Oh,
Thank
shoot.
God. Thank God.
I'm dying.
Cool. Good job, guys.
Alright, we're getting down to the last couple of questions.
Woo!
No.
Alright, I was a little worried about these last questions, but looks like you guys are getting them no problem.
Oh no.
Multi-select with shape and.
Shoot. I don't even know.
Remember, you can pick two. Yep.
Yay! I got
So this one would be a simile because it's using as, and this one would be a metaphor because it was not using like or as, but it was making comparison.
Dang it.
Dang it! I clicked that one first, and then I
So
thought,
if you don't get it both right, you don't get the points.
no, that's the way.
If you get one of them, you get points.
I think Heather just took the lead.
Alright.
Dang it. Ah!
These
Yes.
ones make you think a little bit more.
Shows an illusion. I really hope I got that.
I really hope I got this too. Come on!
Come on, Will.
Oh,
No!
Alright, so this one is just a quote, and this one is also just a quote from The Office. But see, this one references Vesuvius specifically,
Oh.
like out of context, so it's calling on something outside of the sentence. And then this one is the same way with Pandora's box.
but wouldn't the yellow one also be a simile too?
The
The
yellow,
yellow's like as a comparison.
Oh.
yes, so it could
Okay.
also be a simile, but this one was just best representing an illusion.
Okay.
So you could be an
Heather is
illusion
close.
and
It is.
a
It could
symbol
be
at the
two
same
things
time.
at once, yes.
Interesting.
Okay. I see what you're doing there, Miss Penguin. I like it.
Oh. Oh crap. I know. I just.
Alright.
I know
As
what
long
I
as
did,
you
Miss
know.
Kramer.
As long as you know.
Was a direct comparison.
Oh, I get what they're saying.
There you go.
I thought it said, like, I registered it as divorce lawyer, files for
Oh.
divorce, and I was like, well, yeah, like, that's his job. Obviously.
Alright guys,
that's
last
what
question.
Oh.
Alright, does anyone have any questions about that one?
No.
No? Okay. Everyone knows.
You just give it a simple tone.
Who gave Lucas? Alright. Oh, Willie.
A third.
Alrighty.
Hey, I got top 5 though. That's what it says.
Like you said, coming into this, you were
close to
gonna
getting
get-
second.
Alright, you guys did well on this for it mostly being new vocabulary, and we'll keep working on this. This is just kind of for me to know what I need to work on going forward. We're kind of going to change gears a little bit. Alrighty. So I've got some song lyrics for you guys. Alrighty, and then if everyone could just focus on me for a second, we're going to be reading over the song lyrics, and you guys can start reading while I pull up the video, and then while I pull up the song, you guys can read along with it as he's singing, okay? Any questions so far? Okay. Alrighty, are you guys ready to start?
Yes.
Yes.
Alright, so now that we've listened to the first little bit of it, I have some things that I want you guys to keep in mind going forward for the rest of the song. So you're going to be drawing a quick picture. It doesn't have to be too detailed, but I want you to kind of get your feelings across with it while I play the rest of the song. And I want you to be thinking out these questions while you're drawing your picture. So I want you to think about why you decided to draw your picture this way and what you're trying to capture in your picture, okay?
So it's just basically drawing a picture for what the rest of the song represents?
Yep, and the
Okay.
beginning of it too.
Okay.
So it could be like emotions that it's evoking in you, what you think the purpose of it is, different images that Bob Dylan puts in your mind throughout the song. So you guys can kind of take a little creative license with it, okay?
Yeah.
Alrighty. And I'll give you guys another, what are you thinking? 5, 10 minutes?
5.
5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
gonna put
okay.
it on the timer then. And then you guys can check it for your reference. Alright, so remember while you're drawing these, you want to think about the mood the author's trying to create, in this case Bob Dylan and his song. You want to think about the emotions that Bob Dylan is trying to evoke, and you want to think about how you can represent this best in your pictures.
Yeah.
Oh. Blue? This is a blue.
Okay, darker, but
That's a purple. I'll help you.
that's purple.
No, that's blue.
It says violet on it.
Well, violet is closer than the. This is the one you picked up.
That's
We
orchid.
were- Yeah, orchid is blue. That's close.
No, that's black.
Where was it?
Oh, is
That's
this?
right.
Dark brown. Ah,
No, that looks black.
dang it. No
This
wonder.
one's pretty.
I just want to.
I'm gonna use this one.
This is blue.
No, that's red. Will.
That's mahogany. That's a brown.
He's colorblind.
Mahogany is a reddish brown. It's a wood. It's a
Yeah,
reddish
it's definitely not
wood.
blue.
More blue. It's red. More.
And no
Fine.
one
I will
knows
take the light blue. Sky blue.
that. I took this one. This
That's not sky blue.
one. This is light blue.
That's lavender.
It
That is
literally
not
says light
lavender.
blue. I'm just not gonna take extra. I guess
I'm just saying you're getting the colors wrong.
Yeah. Well, tell me again. What color is the grass? Is it green or is it red?
I accidentally was using dark brown and I thought it was black, so
It does look black to me if it makes you feel better.
I'm not convinced you can see colors.
That's my doctor.
It doesn't mean anything.
I feel like it needs a decent amount. I saw this so differently in my head.
I'm gonna be quoting Lady Gaga lyrics. Screamer.
How much time do we have left?
Oh gosh, we should have said that.
You guys have 1 minute and
Oh
45
gosh!
seconds.
It's like chopped!
Right.
Katie.
That'll work.
Yes, what color?
No, I just have them on.
Oh, crud. I
Hey,
thought it was
Dad.
the wrong thing. It's fine. It doesn't even
Start
matter.
looking on the page.
I need to color my rest of my people neutral.
I keep breaking them.
Do you guys feel like you'd be able to finish it in another minute, or do you want another minute after that?
I can finish it in a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a great drawing, but I can
It's an
explain.
interpretation.
I can
Yeah.
explain.
Yeah.
That's all that matters.
That's more what I'm going
Doesn't
for.
have to be perfect, just has to get across what you're trying to say.
English class is not my class.
You can tell.
I'm sorry, what was that, stick figures? You literally had to label your person.
Okay, let's be kind.
Because I needed you to know what that person was to compare to these. Thank you, Ms. Green.
You are very welcome, Heather. Alright, 30 seconds left.
Oh
Oh no. What color hair should they have? Why is it so hard? Where's your dark brown? That works. There's spiky hair. Or hat.
I think I understand the picture.
I think I get what you're trying to draw. Here's one.
Do
Alright.
planes have like a fin?
5,
They do.
In the middle?
4, 3,
Or is it-
2,
They have one like that. You're right.
1.
Okay. Tiny swimming pool. Who won?
That's funny.
Oh, what?
You're
Didn't
racing.
you hear the gunshot at the beginning?
I didn't know what that was.
Alright, you guys can have a couple seconds to finish it up. And while you guys are finishing it up, I want to call your attention to the board. So this is just kind of talking about what we want to get across in our lesson today. So Heather, could you read the essential question for me?
Yes. The essential question is, how does the way material is presented impact the effectiveness and purpose of a work?
Okay, so I want you guys to be thinking about that during the whole rest of the lesson today. Will, can you read what the first lesson objective is?
Yes. I will be able to evaluate how the order of lines in a song expose the purpose of the song and the way order relates to the text as a whole.
Okay, thank you. And Matt, can you read the second one for me?
Sure. I would be able to identify important sentences in a paragraph and relate them to important themes in the text.
All right, and Katie, can you finish it up with the last one?
I will be able to explain why sentences / lines in a song / paragraph are important.
All right, this is what we want to achieve by the end of the lesson today.
Okay.
Is everybody set with their drawings? Everybody happy with them?
Yeah, I'm just gonna.
Believe so.
This one.
All right, so I want you to turn to a partner and I want you to discuss what you wrote, and I want you to explain to your partner why you decided to draw your picture that way and what specifically you were trying to capture with your picture. And I would also like it if you guys could pull out specific lines in the song that relate to the drawings that you made. All right, I will give you guys 5 minutes to talk with your partner, okay?
Okay. You explain yours first.
Does everybody have a partner? Do you want to?
Yes. Okay, so
You? Go for it.
as you can see here,
So,
I
specifically
drew,
talking about a point in the song I want to bring out was this line,
I
"Not
drew
Judas of old."
the mouse
So there's
of
Lady
order.
Gaga's
You can
song
tell he's a mouse
called
of order
Judas.
because
Um,
he has
and a specific line she says in that
No,
is
it's
Judas
not.
is
It's
the
a
demon I
large
cling
mustache,
to.
not a
So then I looked at this
mustache like that.
as this
But you can
song
see as
is
a
like
marionette control.
the demon, and I took it as kind of like the government is what I looked at it as. And they're the masters of war, and pretty much everyone else. It's where like they're making the decisions for everyone.
Have
They
a
don't affect
provocative
them,
statement.
but
I
they
like
affect
that.
everyone else.
Sure.
Parts that
Will,
So
I'd
that's-
just like to ask, War's Peace specifically?
That's
What made you decide
where
to write that
I wouldn't
from the
necessarily say like the
so
song's bashing
I was
war.
just
Government.
thinking
Yeah,
that
like
Bob
that's saying
Dylan
like this is the
was
mountain,
making like a
this is the
political
government on top
statement
and
with
everyone
this
else,
song.
where it's like they are
He
preaching
was
everything that should be
criticizing
done,
Sure.
and it
war,
affects
and then
everyone
those
else,
who are in
but
charge of war,
really
so
never
like our
affects them if
politicians.
it's in a negative.
And
You know
I
what
just
I'm
thought
saying?
it was
Yeah.
ironic to say
Okay.
war's
Okay.
peace.
Do you
So,
think this song specifically
what
pulls
I'm
from
kind of
it?
seeing is that,
No, I
there's,
brought that in
almost
myself. But like
people
one
who
little
kind
thing
of
is
portray
like
themselves as
you
gods,
play with my
especially
world
in
like
their
it's your
own
little toy. That's why
lives.
I
like
incorporated
that.
Even coming
the
from
marionette,
coming masters
like
of war,
puppet
like,
master
John's,
thing.
here.
here.
And it says you hide behind death.
Good job, it looks
And I
good.
took that relatively
So
literally,
mine
but I want
is
to represent
a
that a little
classroom.
bit more
And this is
economical
meant to
way.
be a window.
So I'm kind of saying rich versus the poor, of how the rich are
Window.
kind of throwing
And
things
outside the
out
window,
there.
you can see an
A little
atomic
bit more
bomb.
targeting
I thought
towards
that was a trick.
the other class where they
No,
can get
there's
higher,
red
they
in
can
it.
raise themselves up
There's red.
through these weapons that
Okay,
they're
well,
building,
it's red and black, so
or
it's an atomic
that
bomb.
are kind of helping to destroy the younger part of the generation.
And there is
So I kind of displayed that
a
here.
child
I displayed him up in
doing
the clouds,
an under
kind
the
of said that
vest
he
drill.
was
Duck and cover.
Duck and
kind of
cover,
one,
exactly.
pulling
Because
the strings a little bit,
after the first stanza,
throwing
that's like
missiles,
all I could think of in my
whatnot.
head.
These are actually pencils,
was,
until he's at best job.
You
And then as it turns
that
through,
hide behind walls, you that hide
turns
behind
through
desks.
clouds, turns into
Even
this,
though I
like,
think he was
once
more
again, not reflecting
talking about
anything
the
on them.
people who
They're,
are organizing
on them.
wars even though they're not fighting in
The
them.
wealthy,
Mm-hmm.
and the
That's
poor is
just
going
all I
down,
think
getting
about
the
is the
horses
back
at
cover.
the end of it. So that's kind of what I took from this.
Really would
So we
be
kind of been similar things, yours is just the wealthy
Right.
gets support, and mine was just the government.
What were some other lines that you like?
Because what Poppy has always taught me is that the government
I
consumes.
thought,
Ooh, fear
So,
to bring
it's kind of
children.
what.
yeah, that's a good one.
That's pretty similar to what Matt was saying too, because if you think about
How
it,
much
it's usually the
do
poor
I
that
know?
are fighting.
Yeah, and
Or I
the
might
rich
say that I'm young.
consume and
You
just
might say
keep
that I'm
consuming,
unlearned.
yeah.
I think that's a super powerful statement, just
Can I
because
ask Matt
it's
what
so
this part
often
specifically was?
assumed that young people,
the-
even though you have the right
the
to
whole
vote
part
at
changed,
18 and change the world,
Right.
and who
I don't know, I mean, in my mind,
So many
you know,
people are like, you're
the
only
people up above are
18,
kind
you
of
should
acting on
be,
their own, they're acting for their own ambition.
going against.
Whereas with the poor,
basically
my
what your
thought
parents
process was
think
kind
in
of,
general.
you know, it's not necessarily a single person that's
And
targeted,
if you
it's
look at
gonna
the end
end
of
up
that
targeting
one,
them all,
that even
regardless
Jesus
of,
would
you know,
never
their,
forgive what you do.
you know, race, social
Very
status,
controversial.
Well, they can't necessarily act for their own ambition when you
Yeah.
don't have.
Exactly.
Like, when you
They
have
they
all the
have-
money
they
in the
have
world,
some
you can do
moral
whatever
values
you
and
want,
values
yeah.
too. That's a good point too. I didn't really think about that, but it works pretty well. I agree.
You
Yeah.
guys ever buy back your soul another
Good work.
religious one?
Try that.
Hope you die. Oh my gosh,
Can we
I
talk
hope
with
that
them?
you die.
We talk with them.
Yeah, did you not hear that? in the
In
song?
1 minute you can, because we're gonna have a whole class discussion. So
Yeah.
maybe just be thinking more about like the
No,
lines
follow
from the
your
song
cat. It's a
specifically
very
and
aggressive.
what they
Yeah.
really mean
Do you
for
know
the
when
whole
this
purpose of the
was
song.
Deal.
I'm guessing the 60s.
I was guessing.
Vietnam era.
Yeah. That
Miss
was
Kramer, do you know when this song was written?
That's actually gonna come up later in the class.
Oh.
good question.
Yeah, you guys are gonna get to do a little bit of research on your own.
I see.
Ooh.
But really, I think what my drawing spoke to is this first stanza here.
Did you have someone in mind? For that?
That's just like a stereotypical politician.
So it had to be a man.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Alright, you guys have about 30 seconds left if you wanna just wrap it up.
I don't know. I really. It's a very aggressive song.
It is. I think that was the point though.
It was definitely the point. You know who else got in a lot of trouble? Dixie Chicks.
Jesus.
Jesus, no. Dixie Chicks made an anti-war song during the Vietnam War.
There's a lot. Wait, Dixie Chicks are in the 60s?
I'm pretty sure they made. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Who's gonna win?
The same person you won last time.
Alright, I hope you guys got to say what you wanted to say to your partner. Now we're gonna mix it up and we're gonna talk as a whole class about our drawings. Does anybody want to start us off?
I will.
Alright, Katie, why don't you tell us a little bit about your drawing?
So, my drawing, this is a classroom similar to ours. This is a big window like we have back there. But outside the window, this is an atomic bomb, not a tree.
Okay.
So it's rubber.
I thought it was a tree. So I was a little confused.
It's an atomic bomb, that's why it's black and
It makes
red.
sense now, it makes sense.
And this is a plane shooting. And this is someone doing a duck and cover drill. So I think mine primarily related to that first stanza of you that build bombs, you that hide behind walls, you that hide behind desks, I just want you to know that I can see through your masks. Even though I don't think he was talking about children or teachers who were actually hiding underneath their desks to prepare for nuclear war. My immediate thought went to duck and cover. I think what Bob Dylan was more trying to symbolize was people who are planning attacks against other countries and not actually realizing that human lives are not just a statistic.
Alright, thank you for sharing, Katie. I like your interpretation of desks.
Thank you.
I think that's different than what Bob Dylan was talking about, but I think that it is equally as relevant. Alright, does anyone else want to share?
Just kind of circle.
Yeah, I'll go.
Alright.
You want me to come up in front of the class and show it?
If you want to, you can.
I will. I just want to make sure everybody can see it.
Okay.
I'll come sit back down. Actually, everyone gets a good look. So this is my drawing. What I was thinking was, there was some inspiration directly from the lyrics of Bob Dylan's songs. I thought also like Katie, the first stanza was pretty inspirational. The man with the big man standing in front of the American flag. He is the master of war. And I just thought I'd draw a stereotypical politician of the age, with the suit and his comb over and the mustache,
Very nice.
you know, and the red tie is supposed to be, this is who you think of, the politicians are to blame. But really I was trying to get pretty political with my drawing, just like Bob Dylan was getting very political with this song. And what I have here to show that it's a master of war, he's got this tank that it's attached to like a marionette.
It's like a puppet.
Power, yes, like a puppet. He's controlling the war, the means of war. And that was inspired by, you play with my world like it's your little toy. You put a gun in my hand, here's some soldiers with guns in their hands, and you...
Hide from my eyes.
Yeah, because I mean, he's behind them, they can't see him. They don't know he's the one that's in charge, but he is, and he has all the power. And I threw war as peace in there, because like the master of war will always want war. So, yeah.
All right, thank you, Will.
Okay, so with mine, I took the differences, you know, kind of with Will. He took the differences between the two classes in a political way. I took mine in a little bit more economical or financial way. We talked about kind of the rich pretty frequently within the song. Then we kind of talked about the poor and those unknowing of what's going on around them, kind of controlling their lives without them knowing. So basically what I wanted to represent is you that hide behind desks. Katie took it in a little bit more of an interesting way. I kind of took it a little bit more literally in Bob Dylan's first stanza.
So is he at a desk?
Yes, he's at a desk and he's dropping a pencil, which he knows theoretically is going to go down and destroy others. It's kind of displaying a butterfly effect there,
I like it.
and destroying people there. These representing the lower economical classes, him obviously representing the top 1%. And there's a few different lines in the song where I kind of can see this idea. You hide in your mansion as young people's blood flows out of their bodies and he's buried in the mud. Often, yes. I didn't necessarily take that as literally, that part specifically as literally, but we talk about the mansion and the juxtaposition between the mansion and the mud, and shows some comparison, or shows the comparison between the rich and the poor in that aspect. You throw the worst fear that can ever be hurled. Once again, literally, you might say that I'm young, you might say that I'm unlearned. This is in the second stanza from the very bottom. Once again, just to kind of display the differences in economical status. He thinks that there is a very large difference between the two lives, but in actuality there isn't. This guy also has no idea that money is not necessarily what should be the end goal, I guess. And I'd ask, will it buy you forgiveness? Is your money that good? That's kind of where I took that.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, so here's my picture. It's not as detailed as some other ones, but I'd say mine is like a mix between Will and Matt. So I looked at it. So the first line that stood out to me, which made me go off my picture. So when it says like Judas of old, Lady Gaga, one of my favorite artists, of course. She has a song called Judas, and it says Judas is the demon I cling to. So then I looked at the government as being like the negative, the bad guy pretty much, and the masters of war, whereas everyone else who just kind of sits back and takes what they say and gets the effects of it, whereas the government doesn't necessarily do as they're on their pedestal making the calls, but they don't necessarily see the effects of them. So you fasten all your triggers for the others to fire, then you sit back and watch when the death counts get higher. So that's also just kind of like just the higher class, which is also like bringing in Matt's, that just kind of like the negative effects they bring on the lower class, thinking that they just are the high and mighty when everyone else just doesn't matter.
All right.
I like that a lot.
Good connection, Heather. I'm glad that you're able to connect it to a song that's more modern. All right, guys, and I want you to keep your papers for later, but right now I want you to get your phones out and I want you to research a little bit about when the song was released, what was going on in the world at the time that might have made him write a song like this. and you guys can take a couple minutes to go ahead and do that, and then we'll start having a different kind of discussion.
Anybody else see the one by B.O.B.?
Yeah, that's what came up first too. I was like,
Well, his
2016.
name is Bob.
Alright, I'll
You're
give
right, in
you
the 60s.
5 minutes to look up what was
It was
going
written
on.
over the winter, 1962 to 63. I was just writing down the war it was for. Yeah, at West Point, I saw that.
Mm-hmm. He didn't say the last verse though.
Listen, the melody of the song is not original. It's doing it for me.
Alright, you guys learned some stuff?
Yeah.
Yes.
Alright, awesome. So what events were taking place during this time? Will?
You're all right.
So, what was going on? The Cold War was nearing its height in 1963, 1962, and that was the biggest inspiration for the song. I originally thought it was in reference to Vietnam, but at that time the Vietnam War was not as, number one, controversial as it was in its later years, and number two, it wasn't as large of a scope as it would get at the back half of the decade. So I was wrong about the Vietnam connection. It was about the Cold War.
Do you think it could have also been about Vietnam?
I mean, maybe, since Bob Dylan was a pacifist, he would probably attest to all war, so Vietnam would have been included. I just don't know how much influence Vietnam had on the songwriting.
It came on.
Well, maybe not on the songwriting, but definitely the popularity of the song after. I mean, it gained popularity in the 1960s, but I mean, as the 1970s, went on, and as Vietnam War was picking up pace, I mean, I can't imagine this song was dimming down by any means.
So you think it perpetuated the popularity and made it relevant?
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, a song is what people see in it. So, people can compare it to the Cold War, even though Bob Dylan meant for it to be part of the Cold War. I don't think I'm sure a lot of people were also like, oh, this is pretty relevant today, being 1970s Vietnam War.
So you think the time period that people are living in makes a difference in how the song's interpreted? So maybe we interpret it differently now than they interpreted it when it was written?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Back in history, there's a lot of comparisons like that. I think of a specific country artist that, made a song right after 9/11 that's relatively patriotic, to say the least. I don't think many people agree with those opinions today.
All right. Heather.
So with my music background, I also picked up what mode it was in. So it's in Dorian mode, which is similar to like what your C scale would be, but it just starts on D. No flats or sharps, but the scale gives a like partly sad but hopeful feeling like when it's played. So I think with it, because it was in the Cold War and it was the protest against the nuclear arms buildup, it was like a hopeful thing that we'll see change. Just how the tone, not the tone, like the tone of the music with the chords, and that how they had the hopeful feeling that maybe like that there wants to be change for it is kind of what I like, something cool that I picked up on that probably you guys would know.
So you think it's a hopeful song?
Like yeah, it's upset, but like the hopefulness of the future that things could change and get better, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. Katie?
All right, so I looked up an interview with Bob Dylan explaining his song with USA Today, and he, quote, said, "It is not an anti-war song, but it is more an anti-statement song," specifically referring to Eisenhower's farewell speech, in which he referred to the military-industrial complex, which I didn't know what that was at first. So I looked it up, and it's basically just saying military and wars is an industry, and without it, we don't make money. So like weaponry, everything like that. And Eisenhower was like, people are gonna try and convince you that it's not worth your time, but America has so much invested in this. And Bob Dylan had said he's written controversial songs before, but he never meant for it to be hateful, he just couldn't help it. Which, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But he said nothing's made him feel as passionate as hearing that speech that he just so blatantly disagreed with.
Interesting. So do you think that has to do a lot with what Dylan says in the song about rich men controlling poor men, because poor men are the ones that are fighting the wars and rich men are the ones that are making the decisions?
100%. He also, Heather and I talked about that for a minute. Bob Dylan performed this song live at a military academy, but he left out the last verse where he says, "And I hope you die, and I hope your death will come soon. I'll follow you in a casket in the pale afternoon."
Do you think that when he says, "I hope you die," he's referring to the rich men that are controlling the poor soldiers, or do you think he's referring actually to the soldiers in the war?
Oh, I'd say the rich men, and if not not that. I would like to think that he's saying, I hope the war dies.
Yeah, just war dies out.
Okay.
But I think in the heat of the moment, I think he genuinely meant people like Eisenhower, people who were just general like advocates of the war.
Saying stuff like
Yeah.
war is peace to promote economical growth.
And I think that bounces off like that verse that gives kind of like the hopeful, like I hope you die, like I hope the war dies, like giving that hopeful through the Dorian mode in music, like I want it to end.
So, I mean, interestingly enough too, the song was based off of a folk song called Nottingham Town. And I don't know if you guys looked up the lyrics to this guy, but it basically kind of has, I mean, a more sorrowful, all the lyrics are a little bit more sorrowful. Interestingly enough, he ended up buying the rights to the folk song from a veteran named Gene Ritchie, who is considered the quote mother of folk songs. In my mind, that's basically Bob Dylan. Trying to lead people back to where he thinks value should lie with human lives and not necessarily economical growth.
Early in his career, he was definitely more of a folk protest singer. He was always on the side of the little guy, and he
Yeah.
thought of his songs as a way to advocate for them.
Yeah, the arrangement's by a veteran already, and so, off the bat, he's kind of going into the ring with that in his mind. But all these lyrics in the song basically kind of go against, kind of go with, what the little man is feeling. Not a soul would look up, not a soul would look down, threw me to the dirt, bruised my shirt. These are all quotes from the song. Stifled the dust for a rain the whole day. Hard, hot, cold, frozen stone, 10,000 got drowned that never were born. So all these were quotes, from the folk song that this song is actually based off of. So, even almost right off the bat, the song is based off of, lessening control of the 1%.
All right. Does anyone else want to build off that?
I got one. So I'm just kind of posing a question to the class, I guess. So we keep talking about how Bob Dylan was fighting for the little guy and how that was always his mentality, but what happens when, he started out as a little guy. He didn't have a ton of money growing up. What happens when the little guy kind of becomes the big guy and he's making a ton of money because he's a very popular singer, songwriter. Do you think his morals changed? Do you think the people who listened to him believed in him less?
Well, I think it's how you act with your money. It's what you do with it. Like, you'll see celebrities that donate a lot, or you'll see celebrities that just only spend money on themselves. So I think it's just how they use what they're given, to whether it's to benefit themselves or to benefit more than themselves.
I can actually weigh in on this a little bit. So, Bob Dylan is notorious for being an absolute jerk in front of the camera, in press conferences. He just does what he wants. He doesn't conform to people's expectations of him. There's actually a period of time when he was transitioning from folk to rock/folk rock, and all of the folk purists that were huge Dylan fans turned on him and didn't want to be his fans anymore because he went electric. And that was a huge no-no in folk and protest music in the time. So I would say that based on that, maybe he might have made some money, but his morals and non-conformity counterculture might have stuck with him a little bit. All right.
Actually, I have one more thing then. I'm really glad we have the lyrics with us, because when you listen to the song, it's very droning, and you kind of just get caught in the them of the song.
A little monotonous. It's
Yeah.
hard to pick out specific things.
Yeah, you're just kind of in a trance, and then you might miss
There's no build,
it's
yeah.
super inflammatory language that he's singing. So I'm glad that we have the lyrics to be able to follow along and be like, wow, that's intense,
Very aggressive, very aggressive.
Aggressive.
I feel
It does help.
intense.
All right. While you guys were reading it, did you notice any figurative language, possibly any vocab words that
There was
we
a simile.
learned today?
There was a simile. Oh no.
Right there.
Oh, like it's your little. You play with my world like it's your little toy.
Awesome. That's
And I see
definitely
through your
something.
brain like I see through the water.
Yes.
Like
Good job.
peaceable, do you lie and deceive?
Yes.
So there's a lot of
That's just
similes.
simile, just reversed.
Mhm.
Also, that would be an analogy? No, an illusion, referencing Judas from the
Mhm.
Bible.
A biblical illusion.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I like I could have made a biblical version of Eric, but I made it for Lady Gaga.
I didn't know that until you said it though.
And that whole song just like Judas is the demon.
Oh, there's you hide in your mansion. Wait, no. That's not a simile. It has as, but it's not comparing two things. Never mind.
What would you guys say the overall tone of his song is?
Aggressive.
Forceful?
Do you think listening to the song it felt forceful?
No.
No, I like.
It feels kind of melancholy.
Is there a
Like
word?
just like how it's played because it's very just like the monotone, just very similar. It's just
So maybe he's trying to make people feel like sad about it and evoke an emotional response rather than just saying, you need to do this right now, and forcing people to do this.
Is there a word for like hear what I'm saying? But you know what I'm, yeah. Well, obviously it's listen.
Absorb, understand.
Yeah.
interpret.
Yeah, I don't know, like I feel like aggressive's not the right word, but
Demanding?
kind of demanding. Yeah, I like demanding.
Okay.
Going back to the monotonous tone, I feel like if his point with this song was to make a large statement about the Cold War and what was going on in American society, the fact that you can miss the lyrics when you listen to it, because let's say like in the time that this song when it came out, people have been listening to it on the radio, that have been listening to it on like vinyl records. If you're just listening and you're not really paying attention, then you're gonna miss the message. And I feel like that's a detractor to the song, the way he drones through it.
But I
Is-
think he also kind of did that because he didn't want it to be an anti-war song. So I think he wanted it to stay more relaxed and not have a big build, like to be like, this is what's going on. Like
Yeah,
it
I
just
think
kind of
it's-
stays symmetrical. You're like, this is just kind of what's happening. It sucks. Let's kind of like last verse is like we could change, like hopefulness, like we could change this, but
I think it was very in keeping with the folk genre.
See, I don't,
because folk is also just very calming music
Feel
as
very
well.
calm.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like by all means, I don't think that this song is like a call to action, but I don't necessarily think it's really laid back either. I think as we were talking about drawing out emotion and people acting on their emotions, I don't think that's really what they're trying to do. I think the emotion they're trying to give off and what the best songs do is they draw powerful emotions. Melancholy is a relatively, minimal sad term, but when you say, depressed or something that has like a really strong, maybe relevant term to, current populations, those are gonna hit heartstrings for sure. So I don't necessarily, I think the most successful songs are those that are going to hit those powerful emotions. And I think this song does a pretty good job of it by not necessarily being too intense, but not necessarily being laid back either. I don't think it's a call to action, but once again, I think it's more just a point, not necessarily to point fingers, but to draw people's attention towards to what's around them and not get caught up in the moment.
Informative more than
Yes.
I think
forceful.
an interesting thing, like, I could not personally imagine this song. I don't know how big it was when it first came out, but I'm just thinking of other 60s artists around the same, like, that's when the Temptations came out, and that, like, all that 60s soul, I don't know.
Could have been like getting back to like
Yeah.
just like the heart of it, just like man, yeah.
So going back to what Will said about how he didn't think it would draw people in if you heard it on the radio because of its more monotonous way. So do you think that music can be just as impactful as say like a book or an article or an essay?
Oh, yeah.
I want to say yes, but no. Because if you're reading an article and you're reading a book, your engagement with the literature and the writing is direct.
Like if the author wants you to understand something and they're a good author, then you're going to get that point across and you're going to pick it up. Whereas like a song, a lot of times you weave in allusions, you weave in comparisons, and the music itself, the instrumentation, I think can act as a distraction. Because I know personally, there'll be songs that I've listened to countless times before, and then one day I'll listen to it, like hear it, and then I'll be like, wait a second, I've never heard these words in the song before, but clearly I have, I just never paid attention to it. So you're able to check out easier when you're listening to a song as opposed to reading an informative article or a book, because there has to be the focus, otherwise like you don't actually read anything. It's just looking at words.
Heather?
See, I would agree with that, but also coming from a musical background, like in choir, in order to like portray the certain message, you have to like understand the tone of what's coming across in the music as a group, so figuring out together what you want the message to be. So I can understand where that discretion would be, like if you agree on that certain message compared to another, but like when you perform music as a whole, you do want to get the tone across and the message across that the artist is trying to display. So when you're learning the music and learning where to put your dynamics in as a singer and stuff like that, definitely plays off of the words they say and how you want them to project in music.
Katie?
I would also say that music as a whole, I mean, there are countless amounts of media outlets for music, especially now. And I just think people are more inclined to listen to their favorite artists on Spotify, New Music Fridays, as opposed to checking out CNN every morning. And I think if Bob Dylan had gone to the press and been like, hey, I disagree with Eisenhower, it probably wouldn't have got as much buzz as a super controversial song.
Right.
I think it would have just grabbed a larger audience.
Do you also think that since music is more widespread and it's more accessible, that there's a better chance for more people to hear it? And even if only half of those people actually take the time to read the lyrics to it, that's better than maybe 1 out of 100 reading a book.
Definitely.
I guess like the thing for me is we didn't know that it was a rebuttal against Eisenhower's military-industrial complex until we did the research on it. So he doesn't mention Eisenhower by name in the song. So even if you read the lyrics, you still don't know what he's referencing unless like you're keen enough to pick up those subtle nuances that Dylan wants to get across or that inspired Dylan. So you have to go further than just reading the lyrics, and then it's essentially you're reading an article or an interview, so you still have to read.
So it's like a cohesive.
I mean, I think there's mixtures in both. I mean, kind of coming from the musical background, as Heather was saying, there's specific things in music that you can't necessarily convey in a piece of writing. There's a certain tone. There's a lot that has to do with like choirs, lining up their tone to convey a certain message, regardless of what the words they're saying. I mean, there's quite a bit of songs that don't even have legitimate words, but still can make audiences cry just from the tone that they're giving off because they make people feel something, right? But to Will's point, with songs you can't necessarily go in depth as you can with with a piece of writing. I don't necessarily. I agree with you saying that with this song specifically, we can't necessarily figure out exactly what he's talking about. With that being said, though, we also weren't alive when this song was released in the 1960s. With that current relevance, I can't see anything else around that era that I'd be like, oh, this is definitely what he's talking about. Cold War was on the minds of every single American. Elementary schools were doing drills where students were hiding under school desks, even though it wasn't going to do anything if an atomic bomb was dropped anywhere close to it. And it's a very relevant thing that's on everybody's minds at that point. So not to be able to draw that comparison at the time of the song, I think you almost have to.
Do you guys think it's necessary that we understand that specific reference, or do you think it's enough that we can interpret it with any war that we know about? Do you think that his goal would still be the same regardless of if it was us understanding he meant Eisenhower, or if we all came together and said, wow, I don't want poor people to fight a rich man's war anymore?
Yeah,
I guess. Yeah.
It's all like, I think, down to like how you interpret music and what you want it to represent for you, because that can change with everything.
I'd say literature in general.
So do you
It's
think
all
the audience
changing.
has the right to interpret it in any way that they want, or do you think
Definitely.
that the artist has the right to want their work to maintain in the realm that they intended it to?
I think
Well, it's kind of like the artist had the right to interpret the way he wanted to interpret the war in his music,
Yeah.
so it's just us as listeners being able to interpret what he wanted and like to ourselves and
We can-
connect it to
Yeah,
us.
we can agree or disagree with the song. It's just kind of seeing what the artist is trying to convey. You know, specifically with art in general, like any kind of painting. You know, there's no words to go off of. You know, there's not necessarily a lot of substance there, but at the same time, there's an immeasurable amount of substance that we have to process. And I think it's similar in that aspect, but I mean, you know, it's somewhat of a confined space with words. You know, obviously there's a message that he's trying to convey, but that message isn't something that we have to agree with, nor is it something that we can say, this is exactly what he's talking about. Even though he says it that way, we can interpret it in our own way, because at the end of the day, we're the listeners and we get to interpret it how we want.
Okay, so then, do you guys think that there's a certain point when the artist loses control of that interpretation? So do you think that there was like a cutoff point in a time period that it was no longer about the Cold War, and then it was just released to the interpretation of the audience? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say with every war passing, I mean, Vietnam was shortly after, and then, I mean, Afghanistan ongoing, and I think with every new war, it's just sparked more and more controversy of why should these people be here, and I think this song has stood the test of time. Just kind of conveying a general message of, just like you said, poor men shouldn't be fighting a rich man's war.
I think the moment a song is released, it loses.
The artist loses control.
Yeah, it's up
Yeah,
to
the
the
message
listeners.
can always change.
The moment you release it to the public, who people are going to interpret whatever they want from it, they'll hear it the way that they want to hear it. So they might miss the stanza talking about people are afraid to bring children into the world. And I think that's arguably like the strongest like section of this entire song for Dylan. But if you miss it as a listener, you miss it. And I guess it's how you feel as an artist. If you think that, all right, I've done enough, I've released this song, I hope people get it. Because that's all you can really do, is just hope people understand what you're trying to get across if you have a message behind your song, which Dylan obviously did, whereas other artists just make, you know, like pop songs, just fun to dance to.
Well, and I think moreover than a message, I think he's trying to convey a feeling.
Yeah,
And
emotion.
I would say that's, I mean, I could be speaking out of turn. I don't know anything about music. I think that's generally an artist's purpose, is to just make you feel something, to contract some sort of emotion.
All right, is there anything else that anybody wants to say?
What are you gonna say, Will?
No, I'm good.
Are you singing Whitney Houston?
I believe so.
Alrighty guys, that was a great discussion. I'm very impressed with everything that I heard. We're just gonna do one last thing. So on the back of your pictures, if you could make sure that your name's on your paper as well. I want you guys to write a paragraph or two about what you think Dylan's purpose was with this song. And I want you to use some of the vocab that we used today. And I want you to use some lines from the song. So make sure that when you have your purpose, you have a couple pieces of evidence to back up why that purpose is what it is. Okay?
Okay.
Any questions?
Wait, so we want to get the purpose of Bob Dylan?
We
Purpose
want
of the song.
the purpose of the song, and then lines from the song, and some vocabulary to back
Okay.
it up.
Cool, got it now.
I messed up the first time I was drawing.
That's okay, you can have a new piece of paper.
Trees aren't gonna like that.
Well, it's already in your drawer,
No,
so
you're a treason.
we're not discussing more.
That's how I feel about like plastic water bottles when I go buy one. Well, kind of, but like when it's there, I'm like, it's already there. I have a Brita.
Alright, you guys have,
I think so.
I will give you 15 minutes to write
Are
one
we
or two
sharing
paragraphs.
these?
Nope, you're just
Okay.
turning them into me, and then you're free to go. So you guys get 15 minutes. I want one or two paragraphs. Make sure you include specific evidence, words, lines, phrases, Doesn't have to be a lot, just a couple things that back up your
Could
point.
we like bullet point those, or do you want that?
No, let's
Paragraph.
do paragraph.
Paragraph.
Okay.
All right, 15 minutes, just one paragraph with Bob Dylan's purpose in the song Masters of War and evidence from the song.
And then if, let's say
And you can also use some of the research that you did about what was going on during that time. What, Will?
if we get done before the 15 minutes is up,
You're free to go.
okay, cool.
All right. And then you guys can turn them into me when you're done, and then you're free to go.
Do you need another piece of paper?
No. You ever start spelling a word and then it looks immediately wrong?
And you're like, is that how you spell it? And
Yeah,
in reality, it probably is, but.
Don't even worry about spelling. That's not what I care about in these. I just want to know if you guys get the message and that you can back it up.
That's how you spell, however. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay.